It's 5 o'clock. Good evening, everybody. I think today is July the 15th, so we're halfway through everything. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. I want to just note for the record that yet again we have almost, I was just here, I was about to say we have full attendance, and I look over there and there's an empty seat, but we have 14 of our 15 or so people here, and we've been 2 seats. I take it all back. I didn't look, but the point of the matter is that attendance of the Charter Review Committee has been very strong and very good, and I thank everybody for that. If you think back to when our work got started and when the county council approved everyone, one of their concerns was the fact that, you know, attendance 10 years ago was lagging and interest was lagging. So I commend and salute everybody at the table for their diligence in being part of this. So we slog on, right? And we're doing a great job slogging on, and I appreciate everyone. I guess we'll start with a motion, if I may, an approval of the agenda as proposed. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Thank you, Tony.
Second.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions or thoughts on the agenda? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Next is an approval of our minutes from our July 1st meeting. Have a motion?
So moved.
Was that Sonia?
Yes, it was.
Thank you, Sonia. A second from
Second.
David? Thank you. Any comments on the minutes? Hello there, Dallas. Comments, thoughts? All right, all those in favor of approving our minutes, please say aye. Aye. And they approve unanimously. Before we get to the first item, just a quick comment that, you know, as we go down this road, Bob and I were just having conversation, Wayne and I and Matt, just a little sidebar, that, you know, we're all going back and we're revisiting our work once we get through everything. As we move forward, we know, and we talked about this way early in the process, it's unrealistic that we should put forth 30 charter review recommendations for 2 reasons. Number one, it's unlikely that the county council would then take all of those 30 recommendations and put them on the ballot. And number 2, as we've all discussed, that's really abusing the voter to make them sit there and think about the 30 things. So just, you know, start giving some thought, keep track of our score sheet, of course. But when we go back, you know, we're going to have some discussions about which of the 20, 25 recommendations we ultimately make. You know, we may rank them. Julie just came up with a nice idea. But realistically speaking, it's just not, it's not pragmatic of us to put forward too many recommendations. So start to give some thought within your own mind, and then the group as a whole will kind of give some collective thought to it, and we'll have to place some priorities on, you know, where we end up falling. So just FYI, just keep that in the back of your mind. As we move forward tonight, thank you, Paul Wilbur, who prepared for us a clean Section 507 Department of Law that was sent via email, I think earlier this week. If everybody got that, fantastic. I don't think we need any action on it because we made some recommendations the last time, but this is just a clean version. Paul, am I correct that we're good, that you're just providing? Yeah.
What the group, I think, asked for.
Yes, thank you, Paul, very much. So where we left off the last time, we were entering into Section 508, which was the citizen advisory boards. I certainly had a few thoughts on that, but, you know, I'm certainly not necessarily needing to create an issue where there's not enough evidence says there's an issue. So are we at Section 508, the Citizen Advisory Board? Any thoughts on that? Blair, yes, sir, Blair.
We have a note here. It says Section 508, Citizen Advisory Boards It's proposed to add county council after county executive so that the county council can also appoint citizen advisory boards.
Yes, that's what we were quasi talking about last time. I was sort of moving that forward. So does anybody want to make a motion to add that and throw it on the table for discussion? Thank you, Blair, for the reminder.
Let's throw it on the table for discussion.
Somebody want to make a motion, or do you
I'll
want?
motion.
Okay, and that motion would be?
To propose that the county council also can create advisory boards as needed.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Is there a second for that?
I will second that.
Catherine, thank you. All right, let's have a discussion on it. For me, go ahead, Michelle, you made the motion, please.
I just think simply if there's something that the council sees that they need to have a group advise the council, that it's very feasible for them to be able to do that. And of course, it would cease once whatever the issue is resolved, or a solution, or whatever comes to it. Wouldn't be a advisory group that's going to stay in together forever, but at least you'd have something that can give advice and put some numbers or information down for the council.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Other thoughts, discussion?
I think,
Wayne, please.
I think that we've got to be careful here. I'm not comfortable with the idea of council creating an advisory board to opine on the operation of county executive departments. That's not their role.
Sorry, Wayne, what'd you say at the end?
That's not their role, was his last thing that he said. So, Wayne, if I hear you, if taken to the extreme, I think Michelle is talking about regular issues, if you will, right, that are out there.
Whether it's the
amongst-
opioid issue, whether
Sure,
it's,
sure. Right,
crime in a neighborhood,
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
not talking about someone to critique the
Right.
county executive's departments, and I had not even thought it would go there. They do in their own way, since they do have control of the budget. So really, I can't see them doing a citizens advisory board for the county executive. I did not even consider that.
Yeah, it's just a thought.
yeah. I didn't think of it till I just heard it either. No, that's a good point.
Could we qualify? Could we have it in there but qualify?
I suppose we could qualify it by saying issues germane to, I don't know, how might we qualify it? Anybody have any thoughts on that? I hear you, Matt, because if there's one thing we're all learning, Sonia?
No.
Yes, go ahead.
Finish your statement.
No, if there's one thing we've, excuse me, learned, gathering over these last several months, is there have been some outlier incidents that occur, whether at the county executive or county council level. So anything's possible. Anyway, that's my thought. Sonia?
Well, but by the same token,
Yes.
you're saying here that the county executive can create these, and they can look at county administrative policies and programs. So, why would you cut the legs off the council if you haven't cut them off the county executive?
Because the county executive is charged with the operation of all county departments. The county council is not.
Okay.
Legislative.
That's what I was just going to say. When you said clarification, it was administrative policies and programs. That's what it says. And so I was going to ask, as the legislative branch, should that be something that is?
Well, this is one of those questions, right?
But the legislative branch, the county executive cannot create these advisory boards without council approval.
So again, in a perfect world where there's nice communication between a county council and a county executive, there could be a suggestion by a county council member or two or three who walks over, gets an appointment, has conversation with the county executive and says, hey, perhaps we need an advisory board on X. And in a nice world, the county executive would also be looking and seeing that that's also a problem in the community. So he or she might say, that's a good idea. So, Tony?
Wayne, did that happen very often? I mean, I'm not aware of it, but when you were around, did you see that happen very often, that the advisory boards were set up with the executive and the council both saying, we're concerned about that, why don't we have an advisory board and have them look at it? I don't
We've got-
recall.
We have so many advisory boards, but I certainly don't have an issue with county council members identifying community issues that they feel should be addressed. And I think that they ought to have that authority. And I think that they should have that authority without the consent of the executive. If they see an issue in the community, as you said, like opioids, homelessness. Certainly, I'm all for them creating some task force advisory committee that would address community issues. My concern is, I don't want this to be a backdoor into interfering with the operation of executive departments.
Understood. Bob, yes, sir.
Wayne, or maybe Mr. Wilbur, this says that they can appoint a board to assist in the consideration of, quote, county administrative policies and programs. So is it your understanding, Wayne, that that means, what do county administrative policies and programs entail, as you understand it? Or as you understand it?
Yeah.
I don't see that applying to the opioid problem. I mean,
Perhaps the creation of a program to address the opioid
this
problem.
is administrative policies and programs. I mean,
Yeah.
That's everything.
Paul, do you have a thought?
I think what Wayne's on is that administrative word, that being the province of the executive.
So if we, I'm sorry,
Yes, Blair, it's okay. Yes, sir.
I'm just thinking along with
Yes, sir.
everyone else. So if we were thinking of including the county council, then we would have to add legislative wording in here that would apply to them. Would that be correct? Executive is
probably.
administrative, county council is legislative.
Okay, so Article 5 is administrative organization. That's what this whole article is, that 508 is under. So when we totally agree about community issues, but this section is administrative. So I believe that it should stay as it is.
That's a fabulous point.
I mean, it seems to me that
Yes, it is.
this relates to
Yes.
the county executive's province. It's
Great
not
point.
related to appointing boards to consider the opioid problem.
That's a great point.
I mean, that's not what this is for.
Okay.
I'm fine with leaving it alone.
Well, we have a motion on the floor, and we're having discussion, so,
I mean, it may be that we want to put a different, I'm not making this suggestion, but it may be that if the county council wants to be able to appoint boards, that there needs to be a section added somewhere else.
Right.
But not
Right.
this
In
section.
the legislative section.
And that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yep.
That I don't want to see their ability to do that curtailed. But I think it gets a little messy when we embed it in section 508.
fair enough.
Maybe we should create, as Bob has just suggested, a separate section that addresses county council citizen advisory boards.
It'd be in section 3.
Okay,
I think it would be helpful, to be honest with you.
so let's do this. Let's call for, I'm sorry, Sharon.
315 is boards and commissions. To me, that would be the appropriate phrase, although I don't think that the language should be added.
So let's do this. Let's vote on the motion on the floor, which is to add county council to this county executive citizen advisory board. All those in favor of adding county council to this section and giving them approval, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. No.
No.
Nay.
Okay, so that motion doesn't pass, but yet we've had good discussion. So, Michelle, if you'd be willing, not now, we're going to get to that later tonight, discussion on workshopping. Go look up section 315, and maybe when we revisit, this would be a nice area to place it for discussion at a future meeting.
That's fine.
All right, thank you. Thank you all. Good discussion. Thank you, Sonia. We're moving on to section Article 6, which is,
Mike?
yes,
if I
I'm
could
sorry,
stop you
Michelle.
one moment. We
Yes.
left the last section with the Department of Law, we left the discussion about having someone to handle planning and zoning, a
That's it.
separate attorney for that. We never finished discussing that last week,
Thank you, Michelle.
or last meeting.
You are absolutely correct.
I would posit that the county attorney handles all county legal issues. I don't see the need for any county department to have their own attorney. I just don't see the need for it.
Mr. Wilbur, do you have staff on hand
Yes,
within
we-
your organization that can handle the planning and zoning issues that occur?
We're covering all of that now. Yep.
I think, however, that if that were to be considered, I don't think it belongs in the charter. I think that creation of new positions occurs in the budget cycle itself. So a department head, planning and zoning, could come to the executive and say, we really think we need our own attorney. If they convince the county executive that that would be appropriate, then the county executive, in a document that's called position control, requests that the county council approve a new position in position control and then appropriate the funds for that position. So I think it can be addressed, Michelle, but it can be addressed through the budget process as opposed to in the charter.
Makes sense.
You satisfied? Okay.
absolutely.
No, thank you for that reminder very much. Who's, Laura, please grab a microphone and welcome.
I just want to say, I think,
Come on, step
think
on
the-
up. Pull your chair. There we go. Thank
I
you.
think the Department of Law section actually has a provision in there about, no department can actually hire their own attorney unless they go through Mr. Wilbur. So that's important to note as well.
So to slightly modify Wayne's explanation, if and when the Planning and Zoning Department, using that as an example, determined that they needed an attorney, they might first approach Mr. Wilbur.
Correct.
And then Mr. Wilbur might then advise the county executive, and that's the process. Okay,
That's E,
thank you.
the law department.
Great.
E.
Thank you, Laura.
Yep. Good catch.
All right, so we're satisfied on planning and zone. All right, great. Thank you, Wayne, and thank you, Michelle. And Laura, thank you. Everyone, I would be remiss, I'll just keep doing this, and she's just going to have to get used to it. Laura is such a wealth of information. She and I talk between meetings so that she can keep my head on straight and point it, and it's just so impressive, her knowledge of this. So Laura, thank you for your continued help with us rookies up here. We appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to Article 6, personnel. We'll go down the list. There are a few, more than a few, questions that the county council wants us to consider under Article 6. But first, let's go down the list like we normally do. Any thoughts or questions on Section 601? Yes,
I would-
okay. Julie first, then Wayne.
Julie.
Mine's a question, because I think that Wayne mentioned in another meeting that there was a personnel policy under development right now. Is
The,
that true? I just can't remember what the details were, but I remember you talking about it.
well, Section 601A, that was a ballot question in, I think, 2016, and the county council took it upon themselves to take charge of the county personnel system. It's 5 years later, and we don't have any work product whatsoever. I think that this should be amended. The personnel system falls under the purview of the executive who runs the county departments, and I think this was a very poorly thought-out amendment.
So Wayne, I'm just going to try to attempt to interpret what you're suggesting. Are you suggesting that, starting with Section 601, the system A,
Yeah.
that you would, what would you suggest? What are you suggesting?
County personnel system should fall under the auspices of the county executive, subject to the approval of the county council. The county council, they don't operate the departments.
It does seem kind of odd.
Okay.
And it's been 5 years and we have no work product.
What is a personnel system? I've never heard that word.
Personnel manual.
Laura, we're going to, again, I'm going to look to Laura, please.
So it's my understanding that the provision was added to have council to have the authority to make revisions to that personnel manual is because of the battle between the executive and the council at the time. And things, according to council, were not getting done through the executive. And the way it was written previously, and it is now, is that the executive has to make the recommendation to the council in order to make a change. And because he wasn't doing that, council wanted to have the authority to do it on its own. And so that's why that amendment was originally made, just so you guys understand that.
Thank you, Laura.
There were really two steps. There was a group that got pulled together. I think Sharon was part of it. I think Ed Baker was part of that group. Was Maureen involved in that group?
Pat Peterson.
Pat Peterson was involved in that group.
Maureen was-
And Matt Creamer, wasn't he?
And Matt.
Involved? And they actually went through and did a complete rewrite on the county personnel manual. And we had several work sessions on it, as I recall. And then it just died on the vine. And then the incumbent county HR director wrote her own personnel manual redraft. And it was not well done. So we are now at a juncture where I believe we are engaging Kevin Karpinski, who handles county personnel, municipal and county personnel matters for our insurer, Legit. And we're going to try to get a decent, comprehensive rewrite of the county personnel manual that the executive and the council can then collaborate on and hopefully have work product that we can adopt.
So how does it get
That's the sordid history.
How does it get adopted, though? So it is, like, again, in my mind, it is under the executive branch, but then the council would see it and adopt it, and then this will be the personnel manual?
Yes, ma'am.
That's how it would happen?
It would be the same process as legislation, that the county executive will probably
Right.
put this forward. The county council will then have work sessions, and we'll try to come to some resolution where we produce a new personnel manual, updated personnel manual that we think is relevant in the 21st century. So, because a lot of things have changed. I mean, our personnel manual is ancient, and so many things have changed that aren't addressed in our personnel manual that if we don't kill this sometime soon, we're going to have something occur that will be
We
untoward.
want to do that before that
ma'am.
happens?
Yes,
please?
ma'am.
So I just want to make one comment of something that you said. This, what is it, 601A, is an example of some of the things that we're trying to avoid, to me, and from your explanation of what we're trying to avoid, to address a personality or a specific point in time. That is not what the charter is for. So I understand that it was voted on and amended in 2016, but just for all of us, and I'm taking it into account myself, that is what we're trying to avoid, is to avoid addressing this person and this council and just what is best for the county.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Wayne.
So,
Bob?
if we look in our red book, the charter amendments are in there, and basically what I understand Mr. Strasburg to be saying is that the way it was prior to this amendment is the way it ought to go back to. Because what it said before, what was deleted before was, it said the county executive may prepare a system of personnel rules to administer the personnel system, or proposed revisions, amendments, or modifications. And that got deleted, and essentially the county council was placed in that position.
Yeah, and I'm not sure it should say may. I mean, I
Well,
think
that's-
I think
maybe
it's
that's the
incumbent.
problem.
I think it's incumbent
Maybe
upon
it
an
should say
executive
shall.
to do that from time to time. So, you know,
It's part of
that's,
the executive branch, absolutely.
So,
But, I mean, the problem we have is, I don't, you know, I haven't gone back, and I apologize, I didn't think about it till now, but I don't know why the Charter Review Committee in 2016 made.
Charter Review Committee didn't.
this was done by the
done by
county
the council.
council on a ballot.
So we're not undoing, we would not be undoing something a prior Charter Review Committee recommended. This is something that came out of the county council.
No, sir.
And went to the voters, correct?
And Laura's absolutely right. This is an outgrowth of the range war between the county council and the former executive,
That's not what it's.
driven totally by personality differences.
So if we went back and basically took the language that was in the charter before, but we changed the word from may to shall,
Shall, yes, sir.
then the county executive shall prepare, and maybe we need to put in how often he's supposed to do it.
And update from time to time as necessary.
But make it, I mean.
Some wording like that.
Maybe if the language had mandatory language in it before, with a time period, maybe that would satisfy. So if we're gonna make that change, then maybe we go back and use the prior language, but make it mandatory. And I don't know how often it should be done. I'd look to somebody like Wayne to say, how often should it be revisited? I mean, is it something every 4 years, is it something every 2 years, is it?
Well, we have an HR department and an HR director, right? And that's part of, I would think,
I guess what
Michelle?
I'm asking, are you actually literally saying that the county executive would prepare a personnel manual? Because I
No.
really think that's well out of his realm.
No.
He would oversee the
Yeah,
preparation.
you need a very good HR person
Correct.
who knows rules, regulations,
Correct.
laws.
That's right.
And-
That falls under.
Paul?
the executive.
And it really should be
Yep.
updated every time there's any change in the law affecting personnel.
What the HR director
That's
should
the
be
point I
doing.
was just going to make, that, we could have a federal law come out and there should be a change, within a few months.
But,
Yeah.
but that would
That's-
be the
That's for
job.
protection of the county.
Well, correct, that would be the job of the HR director, which is not for us to, it's not our task. That's the county executive. You're spot on, Michelle. The job of the HR director would be to go to the county executive or the county council and say, there's new law in effect, we need to make a change. So this is a classic example that, I'll be very candid, is a bit unfair for us to have to consider. I'm in agreement that this is one of those back and forth things that happen between the council and the executive, and the result was a change in the law and who was in charge of the personnel system. But back to what I said at the beginning of this meeting, we operate as a charter review committee, and our recommendations go before the county council. It seems highly unlikely to me that the county council, which likes this system and put forth a resolution for the voters to consider, a charter amendment, excuse me, would then say, yeah, let's go back to having the county executive in charge. I'm just speaking pragmatically,
That department personnel falls under the executive. It doesn't fall
not according to
under
this.
the, yeah, but it shouldn't fall.
That's, yeah.
That's the point.
That it's not, we're talking about clarity, so, but Mike, are we able to just point, I think we should still point it out, whether it's changed
Well,
or
we
not,
can
whether it's.
do
an
whatever we
amendment.
want. We absolutely.
So it definitely, I think, needs to be just pointed out that this does not compute when the Department of Human Resources falls under clearly A2 under Article 5, under the, administrative organization, right? So it just pointing it out, understanding that it was just changed, but it definitely needs to be shared somehow, I think.
And I'm not, by the way, I'm not suggesting we don't recommend the change, but I'm saying that
Probably not gonna happen.
it's not, but I guess I will advocate as the chair of the organization that, as we talked about at the beginning of this meeting, I think it is smarter for us to make a recommended change. We will then revisit all the things we're recommending and we will rank them. But I think it's going to be a little confusing. And Sonia, I think your suggestion is spot on that we should, quote, point it out. But if we're going to point it out and we think it's that wrong, I think the best course of action for the Charter Review Committee is to say, we think it's wrong and we took a vote to return it to the old, if that's the way the group thinks. Then as we rank, you know, when we're done, we're likely to rank the ones that we think are important. But everything we think is important, right? But we know that the county council cannot put forth everything that we recommend. We know that. So again, I'm just saying as a group and as the chair of the group, I think it would be more impactful if we're identifying something in the charter that we really think is a sore thumb, that we owe it to the record to say that it's a sore thumb. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, but let me play that back, Mike.
Okay, please.
I'll go back to my point. It's been 5 years and we still don't have an updated personnel manual. It's broken. And it's this committee's job, in my opinion, to recommend fixes for things that are broken.
Which echoes what I think I just said. Sharon, yeah, so, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to tag on to the comment that we need to, or suggest to rewrite it back to what it was. The employees are not managed by legislation. That's the first thing, and that's what the council does.
Right.
They're managed by administration.
Correct.
The only part of that process is the budget, and which the council does. So putting it back under administration puts it back where it needs to be in my purview.
So we can talk all night, or I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion then that the personnel system revert back to the language that gave it the authority under the administration.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Sharon. Bob?
I'd suggest that
Be
we
more
need to
specific.
amend that.
Yes.
To change the word.
May
because
to
The
shall.
old language said may. I think the word should be changed from may to shall.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think there probably ought to be some language that says at least every 4 years, or as more often as needed, something like that.
But it reads, the county council shall by, okay, so the
So-
marked out part says the county council shall by law approve the rules as proposed or shall modify, reject, or return. Where's may?
In the
In the
county,
old
in the first sentence.
First sentence.
In the old language,
That's, yeah, the marked out from.
Yes, in the
the
first
county
sentence.
executive may
May.
prepare,
Okay, so you want 3 shalls.
shall.
Yeah.
I want to try to be, Sharon, your motion, the county executive shall establish by law. Now I'm coming back to where we are in today's charter, not where Bob is in the old revision. The county executive, instead of, right now it says the county council. The county executive shall establish by law a personnel system as described in this section. Is that the motion?
The county executive can establish law.
Or shall?
So the council would have to establish the law as Wayne presented, it would be presented to them.
Council
But
has
the
to.
county executive can establish law.
No, okay.
But that's why
I
it
understand
says-
what you're
it
saying.
says
Okay.
council and law.
So what does it need to say? The county executive, I need the,
Do we
In
need
the
the word?
old one.
do we
it
need to
says-
wordsmith this?
In the old one, it says, the county executive, and we changed the word to shall, prepare a system of personnel rules to administer the personnel system or propose revisions, amendments, or modifications to the existing system. That's what it
Is that your motion?
yes.
Okay, so we're voting on that language to reestablish that language. I'm trying to be
If
clear.
you're going to do that, you got to go back and put in the whole thing, because then the last sentence says the county council shall by law approve the rules as proposed, so.
Right.
Okay, I'm suggesting.
No, I understand that. I
Yeah.
just want to be, by way of clarification.
Thank you.
What was taken out was the whole thing and the new language. If we're going to take the new language out, we've got to put back something
Entire
similar to
whole
what was
thing.
there before.
And I
Which
think,
would-
And I agree with Bob's recommendation of having a time limit of how often this needs to be addressed. I don't know, every 4 years, every 5 years, or just,
I think it should be reviewed during the budget cycle every year.
Well, I think I'm going to push back and say it's the job of the HR director to recommend how often this needs to be reviewed. That's his or her job. Why do we need to define that in here? We don't tell the Department of Public Works that they need to look at roads every year, and I just think that's not our job. I agree with what we're trying to do, but I don't think putting a once a year, once every 4 years, to Michelle's sort of point, that's why we have an HR director, that he or she is supposed to follow what's going on in HR world, make recommendations to adjust, change, modify our HR rules to keep up with what the law says.
Wayne, does that currently occur now? Is that occurring now?
Yeah, we do. We meet with our HR director on a fairly regular basis.
But the manual doesn't get updated.
Well, the manual's work in process right now. But again, to Mike's point, we can really cover off on the timeliness of reviews in the HR director's job description. And we can embed in the job description that no less than annually,
And
there
that's,
shall be a comprehensive review of the county's personnel policies.
and we'll leave that up to the county
I don't have any
executive.
problems with any of that. It's just that you said that with the genesis of this
5
change in
years.
2016 was because the county executive
Yeah.
was not doing it. And my only point was, if you put something in here that says he has to do it,
Yeah.
so every so often, then at least you've got a minimum requirement in there. If you don't think we need it, I don't know how the system works in the county, so I'm not certainly.
Well, I do
would
like
prefer your-
shall. I like that change in wording. But what I would say is the county executive did undertake a rewriting of the personnel manual, and it was unacceptable to the county council, and I believe rightly so. So again, this is an outgrowth of personalities.
But the county council, I mean, under the old language, the county council could modify, reject, or return them for revision, so I assume they returned them for revision.
Yes.
But that was the problem. I guess the county executive did
Yeah,
not
they
choose
returned-
to make
Yeah,
revisions.
it was just a Mexican standoff. And we're here
Sharon?
5 years later without an updated personnel manual.
Which is not the job of the Charter Review Committee.
Understood.
Sharon, might I ask you to withdraw your motion, because I would like to put or might I ask you just close your tab. I'm not clear on I think the motion we have in front of us is a little unclear, and I'd just like it to be more clear. Perhaps, we're just talking that your motion might address, let's revert to the language of before. I'm trying to help me out here, crew.
2016?
2016 language so we're literally going back to that. Sharon, might I ask you to withdraw your motion? Or restate it. Thank you, whoever said that.
I'm not clear on what.
Yeah, so I'm not clear on what we're voting on, so I'm not sure we're clear enough on the motion that's on the
All
table.
right, well, let me find it. So
You're on page, I don't have that.
find it.
No number.
Chart.
It's,
It's the blue tab
right, and
in the
so-
big red book,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got it.
I
601.
don't think that,
which is Article 6.
Okay.
601, and that, literally, that paragraph, we want to reinsert that paragraph
But
with the word shall.
With the word shall.
You want to
I will.
Okay,
Okay. My motion is that Section 601A would read, "The county executive shall prepare a system of personnel rules to administer the personnel system or propose revisions, amendments, or modifications to the existing system. The county council shall establish by law a personnel system as described in this section. The county council..." Oh, wait a minute.
I think if you go down.
I need to take that out.
Yeah.
The county executive may submit changes, modifications, or revisions to the personnel system to the county council, which shall have the force of law upon adoption by the council.
that's your motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a second for that modified motion? And thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Bob. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Wayne. We've had a lot of discussion. Let's move to a vote on what the motion has been proposed. All those in favor of modifying and changing Section 601A as proposed, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Good discussion. Yes, sir, Bob?
Could we ask Mr. Wilbur maybe to prepare something like he did for the.
For the section.
Department of Law,
we can
so
see
that
it.
we have something to look at.
Yeah, thank you. Good suggestion. Paul, thank you very much. Everybody, thank you for your patience on that. Good
We
discussion.
want Mr. Wilbur to have something.
We have to have him. Let
I don't have
let the
enough to
record state thank you, Bob. Thank you, Sharon, everyone. All right, let's continue down. Article 6. Thoughts? Again, we have some 601B was suggested by the council. If you go to what their suggestion was, I'm going to, everybody want to read it, or I can read it aloud?
The 601B, the council is recommending, does this mean changes to benefit programs must be approved by council? Question mark. And I've added, I've added in there one of the, if the benefits change, if they don't change in one iota, but they go up 25%, there needs to be a discussion. So I added the word "and cost."
The version I'm looking at here says, over the last few years, there have been several changes to the benefits program, particularly the 457B plan, which were not approved by the council. Was this an oversight, or should clarification be added to the section?
This for one.
Laura, do you have any insight on this that you would like to offer? Hold on one minute for me, Laura. Matt, Sonia, thank you.
So there's actually a couple of questions from council on this one. One is the benefits program, and the other one is the paid classification plan, and as that relates to adding new positions. So you'll see in B where it says a classification and paid plan for all county positions, and that's to be included as part of the personnel system. Just so you know, the classification and paid plan is a listing of all the positions in the county, plus all the pay grades. Historically, that document was submitted with the budget as supplemental information. And any changes that were made were submitted as well. I mean, not showing the changes, but they were just, the whole listing was there. If a position went from a grade 18 to grade 19, it just showed the grade 19. It didn't actually show the change. When the in-house legal department was established, there was an internal policy stating that any changes to the pay and classification plan would have to be done by legislation separate from the budget. And that seemed to work well until our former county executive just decided to add a position to the pay and classification plan without council's approval. When it was questioned, I was told that it was just put in there for historical purposes, just planning wise. But it was never approved by council. He eventually just put a person into that position, again, without council's knowledge or permission. So the question is, should there be clarification into exactly how that classification plan is approved? And again, it used to be approved through the budget, but there were concerns that the county wasn't being transparent, that things were hidden in the budget. So the in-house legal department said, let's do it by separate legislation. It's very transparent. You have a public hearing. This past budget session, our internal auditor recommended adding an exhibit to the budget bill, so that way it's attached. And again, that would be posted on the county's website, and that was transparent. So I think that process worked fine this past budget session, and I think the separate legislation from the budget is also a good idea. But I think that there has to be approval by legislative bill, and the charter doesn't state that.
So a legislative bill for 601B1. Is that what you're saying, for the pay plan for all county positions?
Or if you go back and look at 601A, where it talks about by law for the personnel system, maybe you could add clarification there. Paul, what are your thoughts?
Laura and Paul, can it be done by resolution? The thing that concerns me about doing it through a legislative bill is that if a need arises during the year where we need to add a position for whatever reason, doing it through a legislative bill takes 60 days, and we might not have 60 days.
Right. My thoughts on that, though, would be the funding aspect. If the funding was going up and that impacts the budget,
Right,
I'll defer to Paul.
right,
The funding would be by bill.
right.
The position, I could see that being a resolution, but you might have those two items needed to make it happen, or if the funding's there, then a resolution, that's a act approved by the council, would suffice.
And if we want, go ahead, Laura.
I really like the idea what the internal auditor recommended, because it
Agree.
is done by legislative bill,
Agree.
and that bill specifically says effective July 1st, because
Sure.
it's the beginning of a fiscal year.
And it ties a salary with, again, the
Yes.
addendum to this is, making up a position, this is for this position. Do you think, what might you recommend, and it's okay, and everybody, please understand that Laura works for Wicomico County. She works for the county council, and she's here to help us toward that goal of good governance. Laura, what change, we're talking about a legislative bill for funding and a resolution to create the position. Where might we put that, Wayne or Laura? Would we have to go back to 601A?
I think so. My thoughts would be yes, you would have to go back to 601A.
So we would want to modify what we just modified?
Could I suggest, I totally agree with Laura,
Understood?
that this, what has transpired in the past, we should not allow to be repeated. And the county council has to have oversight on pay positions, titles, that type of thing. But I'm thinking that perhaps Laura and Paul could get together and draft something for us to consider at the next meeting.
Because, Paul, you have nothing to do, remember that.
Because, no, this is very, very important.
So-
It's caused a lot of problems.
I would say, continue the discussion. We may have other items that
Okay.
we're going to.
Continue this discussion, let's not make them, let's walk our way through this entirety of the person, okay. So I want everybody to be clear. They just talked a lot of inside baseball a little bit. The county executive recommended someone to be the director of finance. That person recommended was submitted to the county council, right? Like it has to do, and the county council then has to approve or say, no, thank you. The county council said no thank you to the director of finance that was submitted and recommended by the county executive. Instead of submitting a new person to be the finance director, the county executive created a brand-new position outside the scope of any position that existed. What was the position called?
Budget officer.
So the finance director was nominated, the nomination was not passed, and then the county executive created a position called budget director, budget officer.
But then it was renamed Chief Financial Officer.
None of which were, to Laura's point, a classification and pay plan and went outside the scope. So there have been moments, this is bizarro world that we have entered in, and part of our challenge is to fix this. And this is one of those egregious examples of going outside the bounds of what the charter calls for. I'd be curious if any member of the county council ever brought this egregious action and said it at this table, that this is egregious for the benefit of the public. There's no members of the county council here, so we don't know the answer to that. But I would certainly hope that a member of the county council would see something egregious and call foul. Whether they did or not, I don't know. But what we can do is to correct some of this so that things like that don't happen again. As unimaginable as that is, it happened. So we're going to continue down this road because, as Paul and Laura have just said, there may be a whole bunch of things that we need to come and look at for. So we were talking, yes, Dallas?
So, as I understand it, though, also, and just so, and this might be inside baseball, there were some positions and salaries on the county council staff that were not in line with other equivalent positions within the actual departmental staffs, which created some headache. Admins making one thing when we look at that were significantly more or different than what they were for the staff, and that's created some issues as well. So I would just simply ask that as we move forward, consider too that the way it's structured now, the council sets their own budget, can set their staff dollars, and there is zero oversight over that budget. Whereas when the executive submits the budget, the council approves it. The council sets its own budget, including salaries, not of itself, but of its staff, and there is no oversight on that. And that, to me, causes concern. So I would just say, as we move forward, please consider that as well.
Thank you, Dallas. I'm looking around the room. We're going to walk down personnel. We're going to go to C. We're going to try to resume.
Can we go?
Sorry.
Can we go back to
Back to the
B?
benefits.
Yes, the
Yes,
benefits.
sorry. Back to, the 457B plan.
Right,
So walk us through that, Laura.
So the way the charter is currently written, it appears that all benefits would have to be approved by the county council. We had a vendor change of benefits, which upsetted a lot of employees. Of course, they start reaching out to their council representatives about it. And there was discussion that perhaps the county council should have approved that. The vendor change resulted in, it's a 457 plan, which is a retirement plan very similar to a 401k. That benefit change resulted in different funds being offered. And there was a particular fund that allowed a 4% return. And under the new vendor, that was no longer offered. So that created some people, they got upset over it.
To provide some context, federal law required the 457 plan to be bid out. and it was bid out, and the most, I wasn't on the review panel, but the vendor who was selected was deemed to have the most responsive bid. The old vendor was not continuing to offer a 4% fixed return. The issue that we ran into is that the communication to employees, the communication to council was non-existent. And employees weren't informed of the change. Employees weren't given the time. Had they been, I'll take retirees. The retirees at the time, most of them were in the fixed 4% return bracket. Had they been advised that this change was going to take place, they could have rolled their 457 into a different plan that may have been quite a bit more competitive than the plan they got rolled into. So it was a horrendous lack of communication.
Is this a charter review question, or is this a bad management question?
Well, it was horrendous management, but I will side with the county council in saying that any change in compensation packages, be it direct or indirect, should be proposed to the county council and adopted by the county council and/or modified by the county council. I don't think, the county council approves our annual budget, appropriates the funds to pay people. If we're going to make a change in benefits, that ought to see the light of day, and it should be deliberated upon by council and either modified, rejected, or approved. So I totally agree with that.
Where might that appear in section 600? Where would be the appropriate place to add something about change in benefits must be approved by the county council?
If you're looking at
Sonia?
601A, right?
Yes.
And I know we're talking about clarifying, especially B1, especially that one, so I understand clarifying that, and I don't know where that would go. But if you're looking at 601A, however we word it, doesn't that cover, do we need to add more wording? Doesn't that cover everything? I mean, it says as per what's in the section, so.
Maybe I'm just confused. There is a personnel manual.
Yes.
The personnel manual would have the 457
Not necessarily.
in it.
Not
It's a
necessarily.
voluntary benefit, so it would not necessarily be in the personnel manual. The manner and
But the personnel manual would say who the vendor is and what you can choose
No.
from.
No,
No, it's a voluntary, I mean, it's just like, we also offer, AFLAC, if you want AFLAC. The HR department, when employees are hired, they're given information on AFLAC. They're given information on our 457 plan, and they can sign up if they want to. They don't have to sign up. They're mandated to participate in the county pension plan. But voluntary benefits are just that, they're voluntary. So they're not really embedded in the personnel manual. And that may be something that we want to revisit as we revise our manual.
So the program we're talking about is a voluntary program?
It's a voluntary program, yeah.
But I
Go ahead.
think it still should be, the administration should approve it and recommend it, and the council, I think council should approve it. I mean, because,
Right.
I mean, to be honest with you, there could be, some sleight of hand going on, and you don't know that.
I agree, but doesn't 601A cover that? It doesn't? But if it says that the personnel system as described in this section isn't, when we're talking about benefits program, isn't that part of the personnel system that's described in this section? You don't need to add words just to add words. I think it's clear. I don't understand.
Well, I mean,
Why it's
to be
not.
honest with you, I read it the same way you did, so we have the same problem. I mean, I read it and I wrote a note beside 601B and said, yes, Because it just seems to me that the charter already says that the
think that is
personnel
there.
system includes benefits, and benefits is referred to in 601A and requires it to be approved by the county council. So I thought it was already in there.
Would we clarify in that section that benefits includes mandated and voluntary benefits? That would provide the clarity.
But that's what benefits are. I have benefits at Purdue, and you have the ones that are, benefits means the ones that you have to take and the ones that that you can have a choice of. Get a benefits manual.
I think it's clear as well.
Please.
I think what else we're trying to do belongs in the HR
Yeah, man,
director's
Okay.
presentation when they come to the budget with the council. It's an administration, but that says,
Bad communication is not,
no, when
Our-
we get to what you do when they don't follow the rules. But this rule is pretty clear. But that's where that all goes. It's written, but what do you do when you don't follow it?
just part of the great question that we'll probably not be able to resolve here at the Charter Review Committee level, unfortunately. Okay. Was there anything else? I'm looking at 601B in person. I think we've covered what the council was looking at.
Can I just clarify that you're gonna, so the clarification, or what we've talked about, that's first on your list, is clarification for just B1.
Yes,
Right.
I'll work with Paul on that one.
Yeah, right, that y'all, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We're into C. Yes, Julie?
Remember the handout from last meeting?
I don't know.
The thing that we made a copy and handed it all out that I
Yes.
brought. It was either last meeting or meeting before, and this is the same, I just wanted to make note that this is the same text that's in that, which is in the same, it's consistent all the way across, about the $100 and the $1,000 and the 6 months or more. All of that was part of the handout, part of my further research as a workshop, and I didn't know it was here too, but it's the same text that's here too, about enforcement. C.
So are we good? I'm not,
Well, I didn't know, before I thought that we kept saying, well, how are we gonna enforce this? What's our obligation to enforce? And I'm thinking, here it is right here, we just hadn't made note of it before.
thank you, Julie. My brain is, I need to take a 5-minute break. That's me personally. So let's get up, walk around 5 minutes. It is 6:04. Let's be back here at 6:09. Thanks.
Mike,
Yes.
I got a text from Phil Tillman.
Yes.
He and I played golf down at Green Hill today.
Yes.
And I left after the first 9 holes
So,
because of heat exhaustion.
so Phil's,
Phil continued to play on.
so now he's, okay.
So he just sent me a text that
I
he's
should have
just
played
not
the
up
extra
to
9
it.
holes. No worries. It's a good hot day.
Oh, it was brutal.
Play golf today.
Played golf today down at Green Hill, yeah.
Yeah, I have that too, there's too many papers.
Unless you were out there at 6, and even then.
No, we teed off at 12:30.
Right in the
It's
heat
a
of
PhD.
And we're all in our 70s.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Why not, right?
Too many papers. So the way that
Where'd you play?
Green Hill.
Green Hill.
Yeah. We played the
so,
front
and we go
nine.
through
You
this
get
at
a fairly nice breeze
in my job
off the
too.
river.
So we have a
It's coming off the
specification,
river.
so we'll
Felt
call
pretty
that
good.
even a charter.
But
And
then we got back
it's probably even
where
more specific.
tree line was blocking the breeze.
But a charter, it's general, it should have information, it needs to have information.
And I
When we
stopped
talk about
sweating.
Specifics of
Massive
benefits.
headache.
Oh, no, you're getting that, there you go. Then you're getting into.
I went in the clubhouse, hydrated,
Right.
drove home.
I think what we're saying here is, the consensus here is that number one, cancel.
Yes, and that's, and that's what we put in A. Yep. And A covers all of,
Right.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
but so the one piece,
Oh, it's
when they were
beautiful.
talking about it,
It's
it covers
beautiful.
everything, but there's still the issue that they
Is that
talked
right?
about with the pay plan. It sounds like it's more than just a personality issue. Right? So it sounds like there is something to clarify there. Just want to make sure that it's something.
Apparently, he put in a new create a new position and then gave it a salary.
Right.
And then gave the person that job, all of which should have been approved.
So when you,
And it had to need to be approved by the council.
right, so Bob, so when you look at what we talked about for the discussion for B1, and if we get our wording together for 601A, now, does that not cover what we need to add? I thought it did. I know. So, going past this point, because I understand that it was an issue, and I think it's more than, is it more than personnel? That's what I'm trying to say.
I don't know the answer. I mean, the problem.
I have no idea what you just said.
In a unique period of time because of conflict. And I don't know.
I think it was, yeah.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I did not answer the
We'll see what
question.
happens here, because we don't have
I agree with you. I mean, at some point,
Back to
at some point,
state of Maryland has.
some of the changes we think might be important are not gonna get put on the ballot because we've got too many of them.
I didn't know it was in here.
Grant. Yeah.
Since you had just mentioned, does anybody want to talk about
This
C?
one,
So
I
raise
mean,
your hand.
easy for
There
me
is
to
the
say,
whole
but
thing.
I haven't seen the 22 before or the 22 after, but you know, clearly this one needs to go back.
Oh, I am sorry. No wonder you were confused. I was thinking this was my C. I
Well, the Human Resources Department is under
You're
the
like, it's
executive
not
by
here.
definition.
No, I'm like, I was over there.
I don't
So
understand.
did you know that it was in there?
How many employees?
I didn't know.
Several hundred, 300, 400?
Exactly.
How many employees in the county?
I'm right here. I think I'm thinking about right now.
Now, that's not including a board of ed, that's just.
That doesn't include Board of Ed.
We've got-
And it goes higher.
No. I'm apologizing. So
Oh.
We have even more
correct.
so spring and
you
summer.
have given us the
But
enforcement
A
vehicle.
good year-round number is
Whether
about
anybody
650.
wants to use that enforcement.
You know, clearly needs to have a very serious HR department.
That's why it doesn't make
Absolutely.
sense
When I
on that
just said
C.
about,
Absolutely,
you know, it's
no question.
about every year here. It's a real position.
I don't even like it.
I've been there.
I mean, you probably the same way. You just wanted to sell insurance. You don't want to have to manage the office.
That's right. Basically, I wanted.
I wanted to practice law, not manage the office, because you can't win managing the office. It's a no-win situation. And about half the time, you don't even know there's conflicts.
Right.
Because they won't tell you.
No.
You walk in one day, there's been some blow up and say, what happened?
Where'd this come from?
Well, this has been going on for what, you haven't heard?
Doesn't say to me.
It would only happen, we had a situation where it only happened on the rare occasion when no lawyers were in the office. And then the staff
I
would
couldn't
have
believe that they were continuing.
But as soon as, they didn't do it with lawyers.
No.
That's dangerous.
I came back one day
That's dangerous.
from
I just said, I mean, I finished up the ninth hole.
I surrender. I'm
I
done.
said, guys.
I'm out.
And even though I know that.
I'm going to sit down with Doug or whoever it was.
And they kept playing. I don't know whether they finished
Please
18.
tell me they weren't walking.
Oh, no, we were riding.
But still,
The heat index was still over.
correct.
I'm doing that on purpose. You know,
Thank you, everybody.
I'm doing this for the 650 people.
It's had a long day.
It's been a long day. This isn't, again, this isn't, hell, you're a lawyer. You got to go through stuff like this every day. This is hard. I don't mean literally, this is hard.
Well, words make a difference.
Well, unfortunately, when you get down to these policies, you'll get somebody coming with a magnifying glass and they're gonna say,
Correct.
you know,
That's right.
shall or will
Will.
or whatever, or if they want to, and however they decide
It's
to
rewarding
interpret
sometimes.
it, or ignore it.
Sharon and Tony. Okay, we're close.
Sharon's here.
Sharon's here. We will, Tony will get here in a moment. Let us, thank you, everybody, for the break. I needed it. I appreciate it, your willingness to let me take that break. So reminding the group, we're at 601C, off camera, or off. So Julie, bless her heart, and good for her, she was at 605C, which is enforcement. So if it looked like I had no idea what she was talking about, it's because I didn't, but that's because she was ahead of me. But what Julie was saying is that she provided for us, and I absolutely do recall. Remember, at the end of the day, when it's all about code enforcement, there's, correct, the Maryland Code of Local Government.
Figure out where this.
And the law already exists, but somebody's got to pull the trigger in order to make that happen. So, resuming, we are at 601C, exempt positions. Any thoughts? Let's turn the page. 601-1, collective bargaining. Any thoughts?
It's working fine.
Okay. Section 602, appointments, promotions, and actions. Section 603, again, if I, just tell me to, County Personnel Board.
My only question I picked up on that was, do they need to be reappointed? So for example, if somebody serves a term, let's see, appoint himself to be for a 3-year term, and then maybe the executive, and I'm looking at my notes I made several weeks ago, but
Has this been,
does it have to go through a reappointment process?
Yes.
Okay.
and we're good? No
Are there any
problem?
limits on these terms?
Excuse me,
Are there any limits on these terms?
anyone?
No?
No.
I would question that you don't have limits. I really do. I mean, I serve on Maryland Ag Commission. I'm on my second term.
Right.
After 2 terms, you must come off of there for at least a period of 2 years. So why wouldn't we have limits on terms there? That would be my question.
For the same reason we don't have limits on terms on the executive or the council. If we're going to do it on one, let's do it on all. I'm in favor of it.
This is a
These aren't elected.
It's a volunteer.
Voluntary.
These are volunteers.
But-
on the personnel board.
Use your
Thank you. Steel tone, yeah, that's a shared microphone tonight.
Yeah.
You're on this board, Sharon?
I'm on the personnel board.
How long have you been on this board?
So I was just appointed last year
How often does it meet?
as needed.
Okay, as needed. Michelle, you raise a very good point. I'm
It's
not,
appointed. It's not an elected position. It's appointed.
yeah.
Appointed.
I mean, you raise a great point. I mean, we're all on boards, and there's usually, term limits on how many times you can serve on a board. Whether the voters want to take action on this,
Just a question.
no, I understood,
It's-
yeah.
To one of the points that the term is because, again, it's as needed and it's mostly grievance, is what the personnel board hears. And there's continuity
Okay.
of,
Of knowledge?
knowledge.
Yeah, sure, understood. Okay. Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Michelle. Are we good? All right. Section 604, the duties of the Personnel Board. Huh. Are they, all right, Section 605, Dallas?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is the proper place for it, but I'd like to add a section under B, 1, for another letter, D, that says that no immediate relative of the executive or council can be employed by the county.
Paul? What are the nepotism rules in the state of Maryland?
Directly super. You can still.
And would we be any different?
Yeah, it's,
I don't know the answer. I don't know. Dallas, I'm not saying this it doesn't have merit, but if we went down this road, are we within our purview to go down this road?
I would have to check that for you. State of Maryland nepotism rules.
Well,
Don't
I mean,
know
that-
off the top of my head.
And that's fine, and
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about.
yeah, and what in again, looking back in the past, this issue came up. The executive had 2 children working for the county. The ethics board, I believe, said that was okay. The ethics board, that was okay. To people that worked in the county, that was not okay. And I feel like it should be addressed that You know, regardless of direct supervision or not, when you can call up and say, hey, Dad, there creates a lot of tension and morale issues that I feel needed to be addressed by saying, you know, if you're a political leader, your immediate family should not be working in that body of government.
So, I mean, I understand, I thought that's where you were coming from, and I understand the basis for it, but let's carry that out to its logical conclusion. So you want to run for county council and your spouse is a teacher. Does that mean you can't run for county council and/or your spouse has to quit? And/or if you don't, if you're going to say the Board of Ed is somehow a separate department, let's say that your spouse is a police officer, a county sheriff. Does the county sheriff employee have to quit in order for you to run for county council or county executive, or are you prohibited? I understand what you're saying. I'm just not sure if you carry it out to its logical conclusion. I don't know how you address that, because while I understand we don't want the county executive to hire his entire family to work for the county after he's elected, I don't know that we want to be in a situation where somebody can't run for county executive or county council because their spouse happens to be an employee already and has been for 20 years.
That's a strong point.
And I mean, I'm sure, I don't know that there's any current members, but I know that there's at least one or two whose spouses were teachers.
Sure. So that's a good point. Dallas, if you want to make a motion, you can make a motion. We can see if there's a second. And much like with a few of the other things that we do, I'm echoing Phil, who's not here with us this evening. If we then find out later that, you know, that's can't be done, then some research would do that. So
Yeah.
if you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we add a section under 605B1D that says no member of the executive or county council's immediate family may be employed by the Wicomico County government, with the exception of the school board.
Well, you have to, put
Well, then we get in,
you've got to
Sheriff's
include the
Department.
sheriff too, because he's an elected sheriff.
maybe they work at Public Works, and maybe
State's
they
attorney
work state.
He's an elected state's
Okay,
attorney.
well,
Again, Dallas, I'm
Well,
going to
that- okay,
recommend
well,
that you put your motion on the floor,
which I did.
and I'm going to recommend that you take out your excluding.
And I'll take out the exclusion of the school board. We'll just say the
Thank you.
county government in
All right.
general.
Is there a second for that motion? Okay, no second. Thank you very much. We're again back at 605 is where we are. It's conflict of interest, A, B, going down, bottom of the page to 2. Going over, looking around the room, going to 605, turn the page, 605C, 606, 607. I have it.
Just one-
Go ahead, Matt.
As I say, I was looking through the paperwork, and I couldn't quite figure out where this fit in, but now that you've pointed out, would it not be more appropriate in 605C to have it reference the Maryland law? Would something like that be, that way if the law becomes stricter or less strict, we don't have to, it doesn't have to be dealt with here?
I'm sorry, Matt, I'm not following.
Well, it's my understanding, I guess Julie gave us this, that this was
Yep.
a code, Title 10, Subtitle 2, 10-202 local laws, and it refers to penalties in the event of.
Okay? So that law exists. I don't think if we delineated and added in every section of this charter what law is applicable if this goes sideways, we could be here forever.
Oh, okay.
You with me? There are laws on the books. It's up to individual members within the government to raise whether those rules, laws are being followed or not. I hear you, but I don't know if that's a road we should go down. Just my thoughts, because, again, there's laws everywhere. It's personally, I'll say it aloud, it's a little frustrating that, when we go back to the budget officer, that there wasn't some extreme pushback from the county council on that, which might have brought that into play there, Matt. But anyway,
Okay.
so, thank you, good thought. But Bob, please, yes, sir.
Just applies to conflicts of interest, doesn't it?
Yes, that is correct.
And I don't think they,
What that
maybe you
did,
could make an argument that
Yes.
the budget officer somehow
Was
was
it-
a conflict of
right,
interest.
but you're right.
It certainly is not something you would normally think of.
No, you're correct, and I misspoke there, and I thank you for that. I was speaking in a general sense when these things happen that shouldn't happen, but this was not about conflict of interest. Thank you for pointing that out.
Unless the county executive is getting paid something.
Sure. My fault, thank you. We're at 6:07. I have something that I circled right in the middle of the paragraph. This is about officers appointed, prohibited from requesting county employees, et cetera. Nor shall any officer or employee participate in any political activities or electioneering while in the course of their employment with the county. So I ask hypothetically, if County Council Member A goes to the Republican or Democratic club's crab bake, is that electioneering while in the course of their employment and they're with the county? I ask, if a county executive goes to the same crab bake or goes and speaks to the Republican club or the Democratic club or the Rotary Club, they are there in the course of their employment, if you will, engaging in political activities. That's not a criticism, by the way. That goes with the territory. So I'm just asking if anybody else has some issues with that. And if they don't, we'll move on. Blair, yes.
How about when they're running for reelection?
Yeah,
Why
that's-
do they run for reelection?
While being employed.
Right.
Because remember, to be clear, the county council members, they draw a paycheck from the county, as does the county executive. So they are, quote, employed by the county, unquote. Bob? Yes, sir.
I guess, again, I'm confused, and I apologize. This says the members of the county council, county executives, and any officers appointed by him. And then the sentence you're referring to talks about officer or employee. So I don't think it applies to the county council or county executive. It applies to employees employed by the county council or county executive.
And I guess that's where I was wondering, is a county council member or the county executive, are they officers of the county? That's where, and if they're not, then we're good. And that,
I apologize, Mr. Wilbur, but I guess we need your input on this.
yeah.
Want me to opine on that at the next meeting?
If not tonight, could you give us an answer at some future date?
I'll put a star around that.
And if they're not officers, right, we're clear, but that's
It
where.
seems to my reading
Yeah.
is that they're not officers, that that's not what's intended.
Mike,
Yes, sir. Tom.
I
Yes, sir.
read that as the county exec couldn't tell somebody to Wayne, look, you go over here and start campaigning,
Right.
waving flags on the corner
With my campaign
while he's
sign.
being
Right.
in his 8 to 4 job.
Right.
Now, if it's at 10 o'clock at night down on Anacog Road, he can do what he wants.
Sure.
But as he's being paid, no.
That's where that's how you.
That's how I read that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the intention.
And I'm okay, I mean, again, I don't need to make a big, it's just Doug read it one way, I read it a different way. I'm okay. Paul, if you want to do a cursory look
I'll do a quick look.
to see if a county council member is a, quote, officer of the county, and we can move on. Doug, thank you.
Would that preclude a county employee running for council in Sharptown?
Why would it?
Being politically
He
active?
couldn't, if it's a deputy and he's running for sheriff, he can't come while he's working in campaign. It'd have to be on his off hours.
Oh, right.
Then he can do what he wants.
Can you, to your point, can you look at the last sentence? Does the last sentence of that define kind of what you were saying? Does that talk about within the
okay.
hours that you're employed?
Yeah, while he's being paid.
Right.
While they're on duty, if you, if you're a
On
sheriff.
duty or
deputy.
whatever.
On duty.
Sure, okay.
All right.
I'm cool, did not mean to raise a ruckus where there isn't one. We're good, thank you. Doug, thank you. Julie, excuse me?
Another question.
Yes.
Are there rules now for people wearing, another place that I used to work, they would have a whole bunch of people come in and sit during the council sessions with the same T-shirt on against something or for something? Do you have rules for that?
That's the public.
That's the public, First Amendment,
That's
yeah.
public. It's
Amendment,
not
freedom of-
employee.
Yeah,
Now, if you're asking about employees, yeah, we do
That'd
have
be-
rules in that regard.
Okay.
okay. You good? All right, we're at 6:08. We're at 6:09, and the council did have a question. I'll read that. Actually, I don't usually have the updated version. Tony, yes, sir. Been rather quiet this evening over there.
We're not entitled to
Can you speak into that microphone, please, Sharon? Yes, sir, thank you.
But I thought of something, how about if somebody retired from the county and then ran for office? When I read that, it says they can't.
Laura and I had a nice discussion about this week as we were
And
previewing.
there are people who do that. You read about it all the time. The man or lady worked for the county, worked whatever, and retired, and they ran for office, got elected. They were very well liked, but this says you can't do it. If I'm reading it right.
That's what we were talking about, and I think you're reading it right. Laura, please. Thank you. Thank you, Tony.
That question actually came up when we were filling the District 2 seat. There was a vacancy, a council member had moved out of the county. And the State Central Committee is responsible for submitting nominees. And they actually asked that question from reading our charter. They wanted to know if the word compensation included pension payments, because a retiree would be receiving pension payments, if they would be allowed to, run for office.
But the pension payments don't come from the county.
I'm sorry, Wayne,
The pension payments don't come from the county.
county.
The pension payments come from the fiduciary who manages the pension fund. So it's really not compensation.
But is he
In my
managing
opinion.
it on behalf of the county? Is it being managed on behalf of the county?
Yeah, it's being managed by, by contract, but it's not compensation from the county.
So I'm going to, that's what Laura just brought up, and what Tony is bringing up is what the council, if you will, asked us to look into. So does this word, quote, compensation, unquote, include pension payments? And can a former county employee serve as a council member if he or she is receiving pension payments? Michelle, what's your, I would,
If you fulfill one position and you've retired from that position and you want to run as an elected official, I think it's a moot point.
I agree, but
I
I didn't
agree.
say that in my mind.
yeah,
Pension benefit is fixed.
right, so it can't.
Point in time you retire,
Laura,
your
may,
benefit is fixed.
Expenses were compensated.
may I ask when whichever central committee was asking, hold on, gents, hold on, bear with me. When whichever state central committee was asking that question, what was the reply? Do you remember what they thought, or did they say, yes, you may nominate a former county employee who's now getting a pension? Or did they recommend, no, you shouldn't do that? Do you recall? I'm just,
So my recollection was I sent the request to Bob Taylor, who was our legal
County,
representative
yep.
at the time, who then said he didn't actually represent the State Central Committee, so he didn't
so-
provide a direct answer.
if you will, he punted.
So I
No, just,
really,
yeah.
I really didn't get a response.
Paul, do you have a thought on this?
I didn't, I wasn't involved.
Okay, fair enough. Blair and Dallas, did either of you have a question or comment? Okay,
I was just reading the wording here, and where it says expenses or compensation from the county for performance of public duties. Well, if you're retired, you're not performing public duty, right? So you're not being compensated for a public duty.
Yeah. So, Tony raised a question. As he read it, he thought it was a little, I don't know, less than clear. What does the group think? Clearly, some people who are part of the political process, the central committees, were asking for clarification on this question. Does the group think we need to try to bring some clarity to this or play it as is?
Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Maybe I'm missing something.
No.
So I understand this question was asked as it related to somebody, I guess, being put forward for a county council position. But if you're retired from the county, is somebody suggesting that someone who retires from the county can't then take a second job after they retire and work somewhere else? Because that's the logical conclusion that
Yes.
would be suggested, and that makes no sense.
I'm sorry, Bob, I didn't say that again.
It seems to me the logical sequence here or suggestion is that if you retire from the county, you are prohibited forever from taking another job. And I don't believe that's what was intended, nor do I think that probably is legal. I understand it was asked in a political context,
Right.
but you've got to take it out of the political context. I mean, if Joe or Susie worked for the county for 30 years and they retire and they decide they want to do something else for 3 or 4 years before they completely retire, they certainly aren't prohibited from doing that.
Sonia, thank you, Bob.
So clearly, that was not the intent for this, I don't think, but it's still in here and it caused the question, right? So I am a big believer in the power. I will Google anything if you let me.
You go.
So pension plans are therefore a form of deferred compensation. So I don't know if we need to, or not need, but if there's active or something that needs to clarify the fact that we're talking about we're not talking about the pension part.
Sure.
But again, just Googling it, it is deferred compensation.
Thank you, Sonia. Michelle?
But I guess what I'm saying is, we can't clarify everything in this charter
No.
because it all becomes
Yeah.
items for referendum on the ballot. And I don't even know if 95% of the people would even understand what they were voting for or against with something.
Totally understand, but I'm going back to what Mike said beforehand. We won't vote on it because I don't disagree with you, but I believe that it's something to note, and we don't even need to vote on it, but just something to note in terms of, because the question came up from it. It's fine that it's in the charter, I get it, but it came up from the State Central Committee.
And I might say, had they done a simple Google search like you just did, they would have gotten the definition that it's deferred compensation, and the question is answered. Sharon?
Okay.
Bring your microphone over there. Steal Tony's microphone. Thank you.
I think from the public's perception, if you retire from the county, you're getting a pension.
That's right.
Taxpayers' dollars still funded that pension.
That's right.
And if you run for office, you're getting a second check. That's how the public sees that.
Yeah.
From the same pot. So the money that is deferred, they were still taxpayers' dollars, and OPEB was funded, but we have somebody who's then managing that money, as Wayne said. But ultimately, the money
Comes from taxpayers. That's right.
So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
oops, so.
Stealing your microphone. We need to make a charter review on stealing microphones. Go ahead.
I don't know that, we need to do anything here,
Right.
but that's the explanation.
Thank you, Sharon. Tony?
So another way to say it so that question doesn't come up. Because Sharon hit it right on the head. The minute you say, oh, I'm retired from the public school system, and now I'm on the county council, and somebody's going to say,
And-
oh, look at him.
And you were.
And I was.
You literally were.
And I would hear it a little bit, not a lot, but there are those who will say that.
Well, and
And I said, well, I worked at one job, that was state, now this is the county. Well, it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing.
the other point, which again, we're being somewhat consistent on, is that at the end of the day, you did run you were elected, and if people had a problem with you having a pension and then running, they could have not voted for
That's
you.
right.
It could have been made a campaign issue. Maybe it was. So, Sonia, I think respectfully, because you just did it, I think Google search and people making up their own minds, whether somebody like a Tony Sarbanes, and Tony, don't mind that we use your example, you know, at the end of the day, the well that Tony drew from as a retired employee of the, which he still is, of the school system, is originated from public funds. And so Tony served. He got a pension as a result of his service in a publicly funded system. And then he served as a county council member and he was elected. Julie.
When I retired from Accomack County, Virginia, and I signed my pension, to get my pension, I had to, it was in the documentation that I could not double dip. I could not come back and be elected. I could not come back and work as the trash collector
Sure.
or anything else. That was it. And you signed those papers, so it is taken care of elsewhere in documentation
Right.
when you.
And again, Julie, thank you for that. As we all know, not every county does everything the same way. And this has not been a problem here, right? Other than, of course, the Central Committee wanted some clarification. Ultimately, it sounds like they didn't get it and get any clarification. And again, we could rabbit hole down here forever. So I'm okay with 609A not providing, leaving as is. All right, I hear no objections to that. 609B. Yes, Tony?
Other one. I guess I slept through the first part, woke up on this.
No worries, yes, sir. I hope you had a good nap.
That happens when you turn 50.
Yes, sir.
I notice everybody's agreeing. You look at the end of B.
Okay,
It says, shall devote their entire time during their official working hours to the performance of their official duties. And I understand that, but, you know,
I think,
how about if you had somebody who said, full-time required? That's my official time. And you call them at 8 o'clock because there's a problem, and they
I think,
well, you know, this isn't my official working time. So I
Tony,
don't think I need to respond.
I think we covered
Is that
this.
stretching it? It might be, but you know, people stretch things that are written. When I read it, I thought, well, no big deal. But then I read it again and I thought, could that be a problem?
We discussed this early on. I'll be lying if I said I remembered what our resolution of this question was.
I have
Yes,
my
Matt.
notes, and
Thank
I'm
you.
not exactly sure where I got, but I had here, remove other than county executive, and I had no. With other regulations, he, she may do something for themselves, but they also work, you know, during working hours, but they also work off hours, weekends, nights, you know, they have meetings. I mean, it's, a job like that is not a 9 to 5 or 8 to 5,
Bless them.
5-day-a-week job. It's just not.
No,
And anybody who takes it knows that.
correct. Michelle?
There has been an issue with this. We have had employees, highly paid employees, who left this building in the middle of the workday to go teach at Salisbury University.
As an adjunct, if you will?
Professors teaching classes at Salisbury University between the hours of 9 and 5 or 8 and 5. So you call this department head and they're not available because they're at Salisbury University getting paid to teach while they're being paid by the county.
Is that
This has
still,
been a problem.
is it still happening?
And drawing those counties.
Is this an ongoing problem or is it a one-off?
I don't know. I'm retired
Fair enough. Thank you, Wayne.
and I can't come back
No,
and be elected.
Wayne officially rescinds his candidacy for,
Well, in my mind, if that was going on or is going on, that's wrong.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how you fix that.
Well, don't,
It should be a personnel,
Yeah.
shouldn't it be a personnel
Yeah.
HR manual?
Whoever his supervisor is needs to take care of that.
Yeah, that's simple.
That's simple.
what if they are the,
County executive.
Supervisor in one case was the county executive, supervisor in the other case was the county council.
It
so,
wasn't me, just so you know.
No, it wasn't.
so, group, don't, what do we,
I thought we came up with something here before.
that's, thank you,
that
that's
said-
why I'm asking. I said that a moment ago. I'd lie if I said I remembered what
It
we,
said shall devote their entire time during official hours to the official duties and performance of their job. That's what we came up with before.
and did
That's
we,
what I handwrote here anyway, that we came up with.
so,
Section 402.
If anyone has their phone, we can look on mine at the scorecard.
Yeah,
and that'll tell you.
I was doing that.
so can somebody do that?
Yeah, I can do that once my phone comes.
Thank you, Laura.
You said it was 402?
To add,
The
county executive shall devote his or her full time to the duties of the office and not partake in secondary employment.
That's,
Passed, 8 in favor, 3 opposed, and 4 abstentions.
thank you. So what I think I might recommend to the group tonight is this is clearly when we revisit all the decisions that we've made, right, once we get through everything, Tony, respectfully, I will ask you to bring this back up then.
All right.
I will ask the group, in all of your downtime, to really give this some thought. Because this is a tricky one. I don't think any of us claim to have provenance on the truth or on what's right on this. This is a difficult one. So, Bob, yes, sir.
The problem I've got with this section is I think it directly conflicts with 402 as it relates to the county executive. Because in 402, it says the county executive shall be full-time. In section 609B, it says the county executive is exempted from that.
Yeah.
So I think those two things are in direct conflict. And I don't think during normal working hours takes care of that problem. And I mean, this issue did come up, I think, when there was a recent, appointment made or attempt appointment made as to whether he could work full-time or not. And you have section 402 that says full-time, normal working hours, but you've got section B that says he's exempt from that.
My notes,
I don't think it applies to anybody else, but as to the county executive, I think there's a direct conflict.
Right. Thank you, Bob. Sharon?
agreed, my notes say from section 402, and my notes here say that you wanted to recall that.
Right, we wanted to put, I have that deleted out.
Yeah.
Yep. I
That
have
you
it
would
too.
recall 402 when you got to this point of discussion.
Okay, so we're at this point. Thank you very, very much. So let's fix it. It's 5:45. There's no 7. Thank you. I knew you were going to say that. It's 5:45. We have, there are no members of the public here, so let's fix this right now. And then we've got one little, let's fix it. How do we fix it?
I think we have it tracked with what we did with 402.
Let me see, let me go back to.
Be consistent.
So again, if I'm, help me out here now.
According to my notes here, I had 402, we were going to make it 402 full-time and have, and not participate in a secondary employment.
And somewhere, where is the word exempt? Where is that? That the county executive is exempt.
Oh, the exempt, that's under
Is that in 609?
Yes,
609B, it's the second line, says,
other than.
all officers.
Other
executives
than, okay.
Other than the county executive.
So if we just pull that out, will that
Yeah,
do it?
that's what we talked about last time, because that motion that you mentioned failed on 402, to the county executive shall be a full-time, that failed.
Yep. So we're voting to remove, I think consensus was to remove,
Other than the county.
other than the county executive.
Would somebody like to make a motion?
I move that in section 609B, that we remove other than the county executive.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Any further discussion, I should say?
Just for
Yes, sir, Bob.
clarification purposes, the purpose of removing that is to indicate that the committee believes that the county executive position is a full-time position.
That is, I would agree with
He
that.
is supposed to work, for lack of a better way of putting it, 9 to 5 for the county.
Going back to the discussion we had on 402, I recall that there was quite a bit of concern about a potential county executive having a secondary source of income. And I don't have any objection to that at all. But I don't think they should have a secondary job.
Agreed. Governor Hogan has a significant secondary
Sure.
source of income. Good for
Sure.
him. But
So if we
he
could
doesn't.
clarify that in 402, I think that's where, I think when we said we were going to recall it,
Yeah,
that we were
that's-
going to
that
come
was-
back
yes.
and clarify that.
Yes.
Okay, so timeout. We have a motion and a second on the table.
Discussion.
Yeah, we are in discussion. Thank you, Michelle.
I guess what I'm saying, if someone wants to teach at Salisbury State outside of their normal working hours, that is a job. That is a secondary source of income. It's also a job. So how do you,
To have, let's play this out, a county executive, it would be wonderful for a county executive to go be a guest lecturer at Salisbury University or UMES or Warwick. Wow, that's great exposure. That's fantastic. But Michelle, to your point, if he or she is an adjunct professor teaching a class over the course of a semester, he or she is getting paid for that. And that is a job. Being an adjunct professor is a job. Okay. So in discussion of 609 in the motion, should we, I'm asking the group, it's been a long day for everybody, should we vote on 609B and then go back to 402 while we're here? Looking to the group.
I'm okay with that.
Sonia?
Got excited. If you wanted to see when we were talking about 402B, because we have a lot of discussion and we have very good minutes, go to May 20th on page 9. And then you can, we don't have to try and recall what happened on May 20th. You could actually read it and see. Unless you want me to read it to people. But
And that's about 402B.
that is about 402B, right? We had, yeah.
Sonia, is it 4 pages long? Pretty long. Okay.
No, it's not
Let's do-
terribly long, I don't think.
Let's do this. I'm going to call for the vote on 609B, and the motion on 609B to remove the word "other than" in 609B. All those in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. Yes, sir. Bob?
Motion was to remove county.
Other than the county executive.
Other than the county executive. I'm sorry. Yes, that's correct.
Oh,
That's correct. I apologize. Do we want to revote? Because I was unclear?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so I apologize. For those watching at home, we apologize. I apologize. The motion on the table is for all officers and employees in the executive or the legislative branches other than the county executive. We are removing the word "other than" the county executive. We're removing the words "other than." All those in favor of removing the words "other than," please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Bear with me. What I'd like us to do, is there any thoughts on section 610?
Can we go back to 609, just real quick?
No, we can't. Yes, of course we can.
I did not vote.
Oh, which one didn't you, I'm sorry, Michelle.
What you just called, I did not vote on that because I'm like Laura, I'm just saying you're pulling out other than the county executive.
So hold on.
My
Go-
concern's a little bit different.
Go ahead, Laura.
My concern actually involves Paul Wilbur, because it says full-time required during their official hours, working hours. Paul actually represents other clients during the official working hours, other than the county.
Sorry, I can't, I'm having trouble hearing you.
So Paul Wilbur, our county attorney, he doesn't devote from whatever time his firm opens, 8, 9 to 5, full-time duties to the county. He represents other clients. So I don't know, I mean, the way this is worded, it sounds like he's supposed to be full-time to Wicomico County.
Isn't it contractual?
The differentiation there, however, is that Paul doesn't draw a salary. He bills by the hour for,
It says or compensation.
Or compensation.
But, I mean, I don't read it that way. It says all officers, employees in the executive or legislative branch, other than, I mean, it's supposed to say other than members of the county council, the county attorney, the assistant county attorney. We just simply were removing county executive, period.
Okay.
yeah.
So if we just remove county executive, then Paul's still exempted from that.
Okay.
Thank you, Laura. Michelle, I just want to make sure to record the vote on 609B. You want to abstain, or did you
I'm
want?
just going to abstain.
Okay, thank you very much. Yep, thank you. We're moving to 610. We're moving to 611.
There was a question on that. Is the wording, I have here the wording, was there a note on that?
On 611, no, there was.
No, I was thinking that somebody on the council. I had in my notes, is the wording sufficient? I think that struck me as being,
I don't know.
It's back to what Julie gave out, correct?
Yeah, if there's violations, if you will, appropriate penalties are in place, to your point, Michelle. Here's what we're going to do.
wait a minute, this says here, it says the county council shall by public local laws provide appropriate penalties for enforcement of this article. So that would preclude what Julie gave us about the Maryland code or law.
Yeah, that takes you to court. That
I'm
takes,
sorry, say that again.
Takes you to court.
That takes you to court.
I mean, you have a right to defend yourself.
Do you have to say that, is that
So
sort
Wilbur,
of
doesn't the county
understood?
have a conflicts of interest section in the county chart, county code?
Yes.
And that is what is referred to in here. If I'm not mistaken, there is a section of the county code that talks about conflicts. It's essentially mandated by the state, and it has penalties in it. So that's the section that applies here.
Thank you, Bob. What we're going to do, we have just gotten through section 600. Thank you, everybody. Congratulations. I am going to, we're going to conclude tonight's meeting because I'm done. It's 5 of 7 for the
Mike
record.
done.
Yes. Funny. I am. We will start the next meeting, however, with a look at 402. Is that okay? And, yes, sir. No,
Before we started the meeting
Yes.
tonight, you talked about
I did. Thank you.
doing something about August.
I did. Thank
I
you.
want to prolong the meeting.
No, thank you. If you go back to your agenda, I wanted to have a discussion on workshopping, and thank you, Bob, for that reminder. We're going to close out tonight by, I would like to propose to the group, we currently have, raise your hand if you think you're assigned to a workshopping item at the moment. Okay, so that's, can you keep them up for a moment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's 7. Phil might have one. So what I wanted to recommend to the group, and I had good conversation with Paul earlier this week, surprisingly and good for us, we're making good progress. What I would like to propose to the group is those 7 hands that just raised who have workshop assignments, let's skip August the 5th as a meeting to allow those of us with workshop assignments, even if it's just 2 hours on August the 5th, from 5 to 7, to dedicate some time. Doesn't mean that you're going to present your workshopping conclusions on 14 days after the 5th would be August the 19th. But it will give this committee, we're going to take, if you will, a break from the public session to allow the workshopping folks to do some of their assignments. And I would propose that we reconvene as a group on August the 19th. What is the group? Thank you for reminding me of that, Bob. What is the group? Is the group, I'm looking to the group? Because if we don't, if you will, sort of hit pause to allow the deep dive on some of these questions, then we might never do the deep dive. So you okay with, and Michelle, I'm even looking at you because you had some good thoughts about it's summertime and vacation. So as a group, we will not meet on the 5th. That's our prerogative, correct, Laura? Publicly, but the work of the committee will go into the workshopping for those assigned. Is that, everybody okay with that? Okay, thank you, Bob. With that, and then we will begin back on the 19th with section 402, and we will try to clear that up. Everybody, thank you very much for tonight. Great thoughts and attendance and participation. It is appreciated. We are adjourned. Thank you.